Could the BOJ intervene to try and tame their long end? Sure they could, right? They just print more money, but that would be at the cost and at the sacrifice of the yen. So a lot of people are looking at the situation and at the Bank of Japan and saying, look, I don't know if these guys have a way out of this. What do you think?
You're absolutely right about potential dilemma here that policymakers in Tokyo faces. If they really want the blunt instrument to make sure that the yields do not rise further, they will have to sacrifice stability on the currency front, and that's again, that issue already is a political issue to some extent. We're talking about a country that intervened in the FX market, a few years ago due to the same issue. So. That dilemma, it's not going to be, easy to solve. Now, what we think will happen is that as long as, Bank of Japan sticks to its inflation targeting framework, and, if they commit to stabilizing the inflation outlook for the medium term, and for the upcoming BOJ meeting, what they can do is to maybe link the currency market movements to the inflation outlook in a more explicit manner and start shifting the focus to core inflation, because that's going to matter. When you cut the food VAT down to zero, headline inflation will likely fall quite substantially, even though it will happen temporarily. So Bank of Japan potentially has a communication issue, not just against the public, but also for the cabinet. So they have to start shifting focus in that way. And if you can combine that measure with some technical tweaks for the regular bond purchases in terms of the tenor selections, and for the cabinet, if that message can be combined with the reiteration of the primary balance target, then maybe for a country that runs still a current account surplus worth 5% of GDP, and that still has a lot of net financial claims for the rest of the world, maybe you can start calming down the nerves in the bond market. And we suspect that that's the way forward for the Japanese policymakers.
Any of these tweaks that you talk about, Homin, they're going to have to stick and hold and survive a potential victory by Sanai Takaichi, right? Because should she win the elections, the snap elections on February the 8th, emerge with a stronger mandate, most folks are betting that, look, the violence that we're seeing at the long end of the Japanese curve, that's just going to resume. It's just going to get worse, right? So whatever you think they ought to be doing, it's got to hold through a potential victory. What I want to ask you is this. For traders, the technicals, it's all down to whether and also when Japanese bonds can find a floor. Do you have any sort of sense where that floor might be? Because until it finds a floor, yields are only just going to go higher.
Well, actually, we think the yields are already beginning to approach very interesting levels, not just for the domestic institutions, but also, foreign investors. Now, we're not advocating, a very aggressive position on Japanese duration yet, because you have to respect the price action in the market. And the pricing of risk related to the election, that's just a few weeks away. So in the near term, some caution might be warranted due to the ability of market participants to push this Takaichi trade quite aggressively. But, again, as I emphasized, Japan is a country that runs current account surplus. Ultimately, they can fund themselves. This is a completely different situation compared to UK a few years ago under Liz Truss. Because UK runs, pretty substantial current account deficits. And on top of that, the fiscal results were actually pretty good last year. This is more about the incremental deterioration in the government balance. So our thinking here is that once the election comes, the cabinet might actually be able to kind of tone down its rhetoric on fiscal policy a bit, and that could potentially present opportunities. So we would argue another correction from here could actually, open some tactical opportunities for the traders, especially because the fear is so widespread. And in our view, some of the analysis that underpins it might be slightly aggressive and excessive.